Say, what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Yard down! Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. During those times, I accumulated some good stories and some good insight on things related to prison. I'm going to share some with y'all today. If you happen to like this video, be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and most importantly, hit that notification bell. That way, anytime I drop a story, you will be notified ASAP, and you can hop on it whenever you're ready. Also, if you like binge watching and want to catch up on some of my older stories, man, I got some good fights, riots, melees, funny stories. I even got some animated cartoons. Go to my YouTube playlist, and you will see I have all my stories organized into categories, and I'm definitely sure you will find something that you like. So let's hop right up into this video. So yeah, you see it, man. The biggest enemy of blacks in California prison, sadly but true enough, has always been other blacks. I did a video maybe about a year ago, and I think the title was The Cost of No Unity or something like that. And, I got some comments in my comment section from other blacks saying, chill, all you do, man, is try to make blacks look bad, so on and so forth. I'm unsubscribing to your channel and all that stuff simply because I kept it real and I was forthcoming about things that I feel are a detriment to blacks in prison, right? When I first started doing time, there was a saying that was kind of popular, and people was basically saying that everybody who went to prison needed to start off doing time on a 4-yard so you could, quote unquote, learn how to do time the right way. And so what the right way was basically is learning how to do time in a way that would allow you to have the least amount of negative interactions with other people, because I've always said it. I believe anywhere from 75 to 80% of negative actions a person has in prison are self-induced, due to he was moving wrong. Either he was gambling and couldn't pay, buying drugs over the debt, being disrespectful, talking too much, just doing something that he could have prevented, And so I definitely agree with that to a certain extent, right? Because you could do time on a level 4 and you can learn how to do time the quote unquote right way. But it's up to the individual to carry those life lessons with him on his journey throughout prison. So I've seen some dudes start off on a level 4. Years later, I'd get down the line and they would be doing things that was counter to what they had learned on a level 4, And so I realized after a period of time, going to a level 4 had nothing to do with the way a dude done his time, right? What kept a lot of dudes in line on that level 4 was the atmosphere of violence, knowing that you would be violently punished or disciplined for certain type of actions kept dudes from doing certain type of things. But once they got to those lower levels where the violence was not as active, certain dudes tried to take certain certain dudes had no problems crossing certain boundaries. Now they knew that their life would not necessarily be in the balance, right? And I'll share an example with you guys a little later. But to me, in my opinion, man, one of the worst enemies of the blacks was overall unity. Blacks on a large scale had no overall unity in an environment such as prison, where everything eventually comes down to cliques and racial bounds, right? So we definitely know that in prison, eventually, on any yard you own, it doesn't matter if you on a low-level yard or a high-level yard. If you own that yard long enough, there is going to be a situation involving race that's gonna dictate for everybody to come together and be on one accord. And sometimes, of course, with the blacks, it's not always like that, right? I've never been on any yard for any amount of time. I would say over a 3-month period where you didn't have black on black issues. You didn't have melees, riots, and fights among blacks. I believe for anybody that's done any amount of prison time for every story he can tell you about a interaction with the blacks and the whites, or the blacks with the Asians, or the blacks with the Mexicans, or the blacks with the Northerners, he will be able to tell you at least 3 or 4 interactions with the blacks on black. And that's just how that situation is, right? There's always been a lot of infighting and things of that nature, right? And if the way I think about it, right, is I almost liken it to a autoimmune disease, right? So of course, the immune system, autoimmune disease is when the body starts to attack and fight against the body, right? And the immune system is put in place to fight against foreign things that come into the body, viruses and diseases and stuff like that. So an autoimmune disease is when the cells in the body can't tell what cells are good and what cells are bad, and they start attacking the good cells, right? And so that's my analogy with the blacks, especially Crips. As Crips, we didn't have a problem fighting other Crips, right? So it got to a point where now you don't care that a dude is a Crip, right? When I first got to prison in 1996, man, I was embraced by other Crips, First and foremost, I was embraced by other blacks strictly because I was black, right? It was like, hey, what's going on, homie? Let me holler at you, And then once I would get over there, hey, homie, where you from? Okay, whoop-de-whoop. All right, that's where you from? Okay, for sure, man. Your folks is over there. But they would embrace you as a black person. And I believe it was due to being on that level 4. The serious nature of a 4-yard basically called for all the blacks to be unified, right? And so that was one of the reasons why I believe that it was black love on those 4 yards, right? But that always didn't carry and trickle down to the 3 yards and the 2 yards and so on and so forth when things didn't, when the violence level was not at a heightened alert all the time, like it was on a level 4, right? And so when, you have this autoimmune disease, basically is the cells are getting overactive and they're attacking the other cells, right? And that's, like I said, that describes cripping, gang banging, pretty much that pretty much describes gang banging as a whole, when Crips started getting overactive, homie, we, even when I first came to the county jail, I was in the Crip tank. What's going on up in there? Crips is fighting Crips. Crips is fighting Crips. So basically what that leads to is dissension. Dudes start separating. In this day and age right now, you have gangs who don't deal with other gangs, right? But back in the days when I first came to prison in 1996 and was in the county jail in 1994, those same gangs who don't deal with each other today were tight alliances back then. They was extremely close. They was together. Nowadays, some of those gangs won't even go in the cell with each other. And it's pretty much like that in every single car. Anybody that's been to prison, that started going to prison back in the days when I was in prison, knows exactly what I'm talking about, man. I don't have to name out no cars because damn near every car is like that, man. Those cars back then, you had cars back then that was extremely close, tight with each other. Now today, they don't even function with each other. And a lot of those cars and a lot of those alliances and cliques are at war with each other, Back when I first came to prison, you never had no bloods fighting bloods on a whole. You may have had a couple bloods who had disagreements with other bloods and they would handle their business, but now you have blood gangs going at it with other blood gangs. That was unheard of back in 1994, 95, 96. They was united, right? And so all that, in my opinion, is due to a lack of overall structure. When you don't have overall structure, when you don't have rules and regulations that governs everybody that's under your collective, you're going to start to have things like this, right? You're going to start to have people walking outside of what is expected of them. When a lot of these expectations, sometimes when you don't have structure, a lot of these expectations are non-verbal, because when there is no certain set bylaws or rules or regulations that a person has to stick to, it's going to be different interpretations of what a person must do, right? And so you might go to one particular prison and this, that, and this is allowed. Then you go to another prison, and this, that, and this is not allowed. But like I said, once again, since it's never etched in stone and it's never voiced verbally, some dudes are going to interpret it as they may, right? And one of the things I feel that led to the structure being so broken down and stuff is favoritism. Dudes not holding their homeboys accountable for certain type of things. You know, when I came to prison, one of the things that I learned is the only way you're supposed to defend your homie wholeheartedly if it gets violent and things turn violent. Then, of course, you go over there, you get involved, you know, you do what you got to do. We'll figure all this out later. But outside of that, anytime you saw a homie doing something that was wrong, you were supposed to step up, speak up, and let this dude know that, hey, man, that's wrong, right? Because reason being, like I said, once again, California is a place where collectives going to ride together, they're going to come together, and they're going to get cracking. So in the event you see your homie doing something wrong, you're supposed to prevent that from happening, because you may have 3 or 4 people come to the aid of this dude when the fight jumps off, the riot jumps off, or whatever. They're not knowing what's going on. They're just coming over there being loyal. And it seems like more often than not, it was always somebody who got hurt, who was just coming over there, who was coming to the aid of a homie. Come to find out who was 100% in the wrong, and it could have been prevented. But you have dudes who will play favorites at times, and they will not hold their homie to the same standards as they will hold somebody else to. And like I said, once again, that falls under not having no structure. When we feel that we can break ourselves off into factions and different little sects, you see other people as outsiders, even though you guys may claim the same thing overall as a whole, but you're not viewing that individual as you're viewing your immediate particular homeboy, right? And part of that, partially, I feel is due to, as time progressed, it seemed like to me a lot of gangs were starting to go with quantity over quality. It seemed like gangs got caught up in having the biggest hood in numbers, as opposed to having more loyal soldiers, right? So, 3 riders is always going to be better than 10 busters. You know, I've honestly seen in the pen 3 dudes pick up weapons and move a crowd. But if you got 10 dudes that's scary and not going to bust a great, you might as well be by yourself, right? But that's the situation right there, man. When you didn't have dudes being structured, being taught specific things as a way of let's say as a way of basically mandatory teachings, you had less teachers. Once you started having less teachers, you had less dudes being educated, right? And like I said, many times, man, I seen dudes do things that was definitely selfish, that was definitely uncool, and that definitely should have not been permitted, right? Case in point, man, when I first got to prison, one of my very, very first cellies at that point in time, he was 38 years old. If anybody knows about the numbers, he had a C number, which means he had been going to prison for a long time, right? This dude was my cellie, like I said, one of my first cellies when I got to Salinas Valley. Years and years and years later down the line, around 2018, I ran across this brother at CMC West, man. When you first get to CMC West, they put you in a reception building pretty much. The dorms at CMC West are 80-man dorms. This reception dorm was a 40-man dorm. Of course, in these dorms, they have a black day room for the blacks and the Asians. They have a, hope you guys can hear me through the rain, man. They have a day room for the whites and the Mexicans, right? Now, this particular CMC West was a level 2, so it's dorm living. So there's no personal TVs or anything of that nature. Now, this dude happened to be like a porter in this particular reception dorm, man. But this dude had got to the point, he had got comfortable to the point where in the TV room, we had remote controls for the TV. This dude had got to the point where he was comfortable with keeping the remote control in his pocket. So he He would go in there and watch TV late at night. He might stay up 3 or 4 in the morning, you know. Then he would take the remote control with him, go to his bunk, put the remote control in his jacket pocket, and go to sleep. So now, when you had brothers waking up in the morning at 6, 7 o'clock, whatever, wanting to watch TV, they can't turn the TV because this dude has the remote control in his pocket, right? And so one night I peeped it. Next morning I get at him. I say, hey, homie, what's up with the remote control? He said, it's in my pocket, Chill. He said, Chill, you know, you can use it, but when you finish, man, put it back. So later on, once he woke up, right, I explained the flaws in his thinking and the selfishness about what he was doing, right? But he didn't care. You know what I'm saying? He didn't care, man. And eventually me and this dude had words and damn near got into it, right? And my whole thing of the matter is, if that had been another racial group, they wouldn't have done that, right? They would have had respect for their people. But you have this individual, man, taking the remote control to a TV that is made to a TV that's put up in the Black Day room for all the blacks to enjoy. And just things like that, like I said, things like that would happen often, man. So now let's say this dude is taking this remote control, you know, watching TV, sitting up in there like he's in his personal living room. And then let's say he happens to get into it, right? Say you get into it with the Mexicans. The blacks don't run over there and help him, or a bunch of blacks don't run over there and help him. The first chance he get, he would say, oh man, them brothers in there didn't help me. Them brothers didn't do nothing, man. Them sorry brothers, they let the Mexicans get me. But he's not going to talk about how he was creating dissension when he was keeping that remote control in his pocket, you know. He's not going to talk about how his actions said, hey man, I don't care about y'all blacks, you know, I don't care about y'all. So why does he expect the black shit then turn around and care about him and run to his aid when he's being assaulted, right? But it's so many things that go on like that in prison where blacks are perpetrating BS upon other blacks, right? And all that leads to dissension. Like I said, it leads to infighting. It leads to dudes breaking up alliances, and it leads to dudes not feeling each other, you know. Like I said, man, I've been on yards where I've seen or been involved in many black on black riots, black on black melees, right? We always get into it with each other. And that's a extreme problem in prison. And in my opinion, that weakens the alliances, that weakens the communication, the unification, and the togetherness of blacks as a whole. So when something happens, we can't come together and move in a manner that would be best to all our safeties, right? And also, what that also does is that allows for all these myths to pop up on YouTube that you sometimes hear in reference to how blacks do their time in California. And I'm definitely going to address those myths real soon, right? And some of them are true and some of them are not. But anyway, in my opinion, the biggest enemy of blacks in California prisons are the blacks. Anyway, you already know what it is. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program.